Yo, yo, yo. What's good? What's good? It's Stormy B Man, and I am back. Welcoming you to Kung Fu Film Focus for this Thursday, December 14th, 2023. And we are back to speak on a film from the early 70s, a martial arts war extravaganza called Beach of the War Gods, a 1973 film starring and directed by Jimmy Wong Yu, produced by Golden Harvest Hong Kong Studios. This was one of Jimmy Wong Yu's guilty pleasures. He wanted to create a film that depicted the last stand of a group of mercenaries battling against the villainous Japanese invaders toward the end of the Ming Dynasty. Wang Yu loved to make films that show the warring factions of the Japanese against the Chinese and vice versa. He's an important part of Kung Fu film history because if there were no Jimmy Wong Yu in Kung Fu films, there may not have been Bruce Lee. So with that being said, this film is historical. It was made on a shoestring budget at the time and basically had an all-male cast. There's not one female in this film. And the original trailer kind of marketed as the first film to have over 1,000 people in the film and not one female actress. But that wasn't true. It wasn't 1,000 people. There was a lot of the run-of-the-mill Taiwanese actors and stuntmen, and some of them played multiple roles as far as filling out the cast. So that's what was amazing about this particular film. And it starts off a little slow, but it does get going. And when it does, I would say if anyone who's ever seen The 13 Assassins, a recent Japanese film that is about 40 minutes of action after the early part of the story, setting the plot in place, the rest of the film is just action until the very bloody end. That was Beach of War Gods back in 1973. I want to say welcome everybody out there. Smash the like button as you come into the building, and we will talk about this film a little bit. Jimmy Wang Yu was a guy who was a little bit different from the rest of the actors in Hong Kong. He started out at the Shaw Brothers Studios and became one of their major stars when his film, The One-Armed Swordsman, broke box office records and brought in $1 million. And he never looked back after that as far as being a star, but he was not able to do what he wanted to do under the Shaw Brothers banner. So Jimmy Wang Yu sought to take his talents elsewhere in Hong Kong at the time. So he was one of those actors who wanted to write his own films and have control over his scripts. And the legendary Run Run Shaw, head of the studios, was not having anything of that nature because he ran his studio like the old Hollywood studios from the 30s and 40s. So what he said was law, and Jimmy Wang Yu broke his contract with Shaw Brothers Studios in a fierce court battle. Most of the Shaw Brothers contracted actors and actresses served long-term contracts. They signed on for like 6 or 7 years. They lived on site at Movie Town, which is what Shaw Brothers Studios was called. There were flats, which is what was referred to at the time, dormitories. Everything was in-house. They had the living quarters, the dining quarters. They had school on there because they had actors in training schools. One of the funny things about the Shaw Brothers training and acting school is some of their best actors and more popular actors would teach classes at these acting schools, and they would put out feelers in the newspaper that you could sign up for an opportunity to appear in a Shaw Brothers production, and you would have to pay a fee to try to become a Shaw Brothers hopeful. And hundreds of people signed up, and they would select like 3 out of the hundreds. It was really something tough and tight at that time. And Jimmy Wang Yu, who's actually from, I believe he's from China, he came to Hong Kong as a athlete who had studied some Japanese karate and a little bit of Chinese martial arts, but he was a swimmer, an Olympian type swimmer. So being in great physical shape and also knowing his way around, moving athletically, he got that opportunity to star in some films. And once he teamed up with the director Chang Chi, who had went from making some dramas and everything with Shaw Brothers early on and got into the fare that which he really wanted to take hold of was the action film. They were quite an admirable pairing, Chang-Chi and Jimmy Wang Yu. So Beach of the War Gods, one of his first films that when he branched off away from Shaw Brothers Studios, he teamed up with Golden Harvest Studios, the same company that would produce the Angela Mao films, along with the Bruce Lee films of the early 70s. Jimmy, one of his deals that he had cut in the court battle against Shaw Studios was that he couldn't really film movies in Hong Kong anymore after that. So he went to Taiwan. And Raymond Chow, who had ties and affiliations in Taiwan, allowed him to set up a intra production studio there where he would make films in Taiwan, which is one of the reasons why, if you watch a lot of the Jimmy Wang Yu films from the early 70s, like from 1971 through 1974, you would see a lot of the familiar film sets. They were just kind of redressed a little bit. Some of the tea houses, some of the outdoor sets, they were very familiar because these films were made, like I said, on shoestring budgets with similar actors. A lot of his co-stars were Taiwan actors. Every once in a while, Raymond Chow would lend out some of the Hong Kong actors to play in some of his films with him. But Jimmy was the star, and he wrote his own ticket when it came down to these productions. And he really enjoyed doing that. One of the things I like to admit about Jimmy Wang Yu is he was an actor who was very innovative when it came down to directing and coming up with fresh ideas for kung fu films. Like when he made The One-Armed Swordsman with Shaw Brothers Studios, it was a character that raked in a lot of box office. There was a sequel called The Return of the One-Armed Swordsman. That did well at the box office, but he left Shaw shortly after that. So when he came over to Golden Harvest, he was trying to think of what could he do. So one of his last films that was kind of like a Shaw production, but Golden Harvest had something to do with as well, was The Chinese Boxer, a 1970 kung fu film without swords and everything, and it basically showed hand-to-hand combat, Jimmy Wang Yu against the Japanese again in that film. And his new idea would be the one-armed boxer instead of the one-armed swordsman. So again, with that film, he made hay again with a new hero that was a crippled hero. And that film produced a sequel, Master of the Flying Guillotine. So with the success of Bruce Lee's films in box office, Beach of the War Gods was made in 1973. This film was also released. I think it was released April. No. Let me go back. I got my little notes here on that. July of 1973, July 13th, 1973. And Bruce Lee died just a few days later after this film opened. Some of the familiar cast that were in this film with him, I'll put their images up on the screen, was Lung Fei, who you've seen in numerous Jimmy Wang Yu films. We got Su Han. Su Han was a guy that played in a number of Jimmy Wang Yu's films. Tian Ye, another actor that played in films with him on a regular. Who else we have? We have Quan Hung. Quan Hung is also a familiar face in Jimmy's films often playing a baddie, Su Ching-ping, who also had something to do with some of the choreography in this film. And San Mao. San Mao was an actor that played in a number of Jimmy Wong Yu's films, and he was a popular baddie in the films back in the early 70s, and he unfortunately died in a knife fight where he was stabbed to death in a bar. They were out in the public, and he got into it with some people, and he was unfortunately stabbed to death. So that's a little bit about the cast of this film. And as I mentioned, it's produced by Raymond Chow from Golden Harvest Studios. Want to take a moment and go to the chat to see who we got in the building this evening. See who's rocking with us. When we talk about these kung fu films, some people like to come in and, chat with Stormy on this. Some people just like to sit back and listen because they feel like they're learning something for the first time on some of these films. We got Dr. Mark in the building. What's going on? Flawless Mentality. Shogun 76, the Shogun of Harlem, is out there this evening. We got Champion Heart in the building. What's good with you? T. Berry is out there also with those Bruce Lee channel emojis. Appreciate you, T. Berry. What's happening? Who else we got? Mr. Shelton is out there. He says, "You're going to have to take me." That's that line from Dolomite when they was like, "Hey, what's that in that car, in that trunk, Dolomite?" "Oh, that shit ain't mine. I don't know how that got there." "You're going down, Dolomite." He said, "You're going to have to take me." He started doing them karate moves, man. Man, Rudy Ray Moore was something else, man. Champion Heart says, "Really? I didn't know that." What you didn't know, Champion Heart? I know I was talking quite a bit there. We got the man, 704 Joe, in the building. He's got the gi and also a couple of little Asian handwritings there. I appreciate that, man. That's what's up. You come in here with that. Champion Heart says, "One-arm boxer crippled by the Kung Fu Beast." Yeah, remember Lung Fei playing in there with him? He was like, "He injured one of my men and hurt his arm, so I took his arm." Those old 70 dubs, man. Nothing like them, right? They were classic, bro. You watch those movies and listen. Hey, man. They used to cuss like, just like speaking a line of regular dialogue. They would be cussing. "You goddamn son of a bitch." How could you not like these movies, man? Come on. How could you not like them, man? Man, I tell you, man. Champion Heart says, "Respect to Stormy B, man. I love this Kung Fu show." Hey, man, a lot of people like it, man. Every time I do the show live, I don't have too many people in here. But you come back like a week later or something, it'd be like 400 or 500 people be done watch the show, man. My YouTube analytics tell me this is the most popular thing that I do, believe it or not. Not my boxing stuff. These Kung Fu film joints, man. I don't know why that is or whatever, but that's what my YouTube analytics tell me. They tell me that my Kung Fu joints are the most popular thing that I do. And I don't even do it very often, maybe once or twice a month, you know? So, yeah. 704 Joe is laughing about that stunt double in Dolomite. Yeah, he didn't look nothing like Rudy Ray Moore. He was all tall and slender and had an afro wig on. And Rudy Ray Moore was kind of stocky and he had a real afro, but he moved real slow. Couldn't even kick his leg up higher than his waist, you know. Flawless mentality. Dr. Mark is laughing. Champion Heart says, didn't know you could pay a fee to appear in the Shaw Brothers production. No, Champion Heart. They did not pay fees to appear in the films. They paid fees to go to the school. But that did not guarantee them an acting contract. They would select only, I think it was like once a year or something. They would accept only 2 to 3 people out of hundreds. So there were not a lot of opportunities, man. That's why you see a lot of the same actors and actresses in the Shaw Brothers films. And they did all types of films. They did musical numbers. They had operatic movies. They had spy thrillers. They had science fiction films and dramas, love stories. Shaw Brothers did all types of films, man. And some of your most famous actors in their films, when they got to be popular, they would be relegated to maybe 2 or 3 films a year. But Shaw Brothers had a 24-hour operation on their film productions. They had studio sets that were very nice and lavish for that time in that place in the world. And all of the expense went toward their sets. They had wonderful sets, indoor, mountainous areas with rivers flowing and temples and all types. They built sets that, if you watch a Shaw Brothers film, you can always tell it different from all the other films that came out of Hong Kong, including Golden Harvest, as well as some of the independent film companies, because the production value on Shaw Brothers film was just A1. A1. Champion Heart says, a lot of people grew up on these kung fu movies. Anthony Bolton is in the building saying, salute Stormy. What's good with you, Anthony Bolton? Smashing the like button as you come in. Yeah. So, these films were awesome, man. And, me, I wanted to kind of, talk about this Beach of War Gods, because as one of Jimmy Wang Yu's directed films, he did a good job with this. And like I said, there were no females in this film at all. Interesting. Let's see here. I'm trying to see director Jimmy Wang Yu. And he passed last year, May of 2022. Jimmy Wang Yu passed away. He directed 10 films. Beach of the War Gods was his 4th film that he directed. The first 3 that he directed were The Chinese Boxer in 1970, The One-Armed Boxer in 1971, The Brave and the Evil in 1971, and then in 1973 he directed Beach of the War Gods. Let's see here. A simple synopsis of the plot of the film says that during the last days of the Ming Dynasty, the coast of southeast China was at the mercy of the marauding of Japanese pirates. When Hangzhou City was occupied, the general's cousin Xiao Feng, a fencing master, went to rescue his uncle but failed. When he arrived in a small town, he met Shinobu's army tyrannizing the common people. He tried to help them out and planned to organize them to fight against the enemy. When they knew that the enemy's army carrying a provender would arrive in 70 days, they decided to annihilate them in the beach of the war gods and arranged everything well there. It was at night that the enemy arrived there and was hit by the trap. When the rest of the arms rushed into the town, the Chinese people fought against them hard. Shinobu finally decided to fight with Xiao alone and was killed. This film has a bit of history to it, but it's also a little bit considered Jimmy Wong Yu's take on the Magnificent Seven, because the character that he plays in the film seeks to recruit a host of other men who are willing to put their lives on to defend the town against the invading Japanese. And some of these characters are a swordsman who's a sword maker, another man who's a skilled fighter, adept at throwing deadly knives, and then a group of men who are from the town that sent their families away because of the invading Japanese. They all came together and fought as a unit. The film is all action after like the first 15 or 20 minutes. Just all action. And Jimmy Wong Yu's character, of course, is played as a hero, one of the best fighters in the film. But as Jimmy was known to do in his films, his characters usually paid a price for their heroic deeds. And that's kind of what separated him from a lot of the other Shaw Brothers stars. Because you can see the Shaw Brothers stars, they fight to the very end and they'll come back in another film and stuff like that. But some of the Venoms, the Venom mob, the guys that played the Venoms, they adopted Jimmy Wong Yu's ideology that heroes sometimes should fade in the finale, and that's what made some of their films memorable as well. The fighting in this film is mostly sword fighting with sword and shield, and Japanese against Chinese fighters. Not a lot of kung fu, so to speak, but just a lot of sword play and things of that nature. But there's plenty of blood, and there's some special effects in here that, even though it's rather crude, is fitting for the type of film this is. Lung Fei's Japanese leader faces off against Jimmy in the finale, but there are a lot of familiar faces in this film. You can see this movie and see a lot of guys that you know from other kung fu films and martial arts films. So, trying to get some more information out here for you guys. This film also recently this year was remastered on Blu-ray, and it looks excellent on Blu-ray. I actually picked it up, and this theatrical poster that you see on the screen here is kind of modeled after what the new Blu-ray cover looks like. This. There was a second theatrical poster that I'll put up in just a second. This is what that looked like, the second theatrical poster just featuring Jimmy Wang Yu. But this is one of those actioners, man. It's like once you put it on and watch it, you sit down and eat you some popcorn and watch this film. It's quite entertaining. That's the one thing I really liked about Jimmy Wang Yu, is that he didn't mind sharing the screen with the other actors. And that came to pass when, he made a film shortly after this called For Real Friends. That's when he did a starring role along with other stars such as Chang Yi, and I think he had Chen Sing in there. And who was the other actor in there with him? There was one more. It was he, Chang Yi. Who was the other actor? For Real Friends. Oh, Kam Kang. Kam Kang was the guy who played the blind guillotine master in Master of the Flying Guillotine. So the For Real Friends were those four guys: Jimmy Wang Yu, Chen Sing, Chang Yi, and Kam Kang. They were popular martial arts actors from the early 70s, especially after Bruce Lee had passed. These men were very popular in their charismatic roles, at playing different types of heroes at times and then villains at other times. So all of these men were adept at playing in their roles like that. Universal Truth, what's good, man? What's good with you? There's a review of the Beach of the War Gods Blu-ray and a small synopsis breakdown from the cover of the Blu-ray. It says, Wang Yu, Wang Yu is widely considered to have kick-started the modern kung fu film in 1970, following the huge success of The Chinese Boxer, which he wrote and directed and starred in. The film is even believed to have inspired Bruce Lee to come back to Hong Kong to make The Big Boss. Now, mind you, some of this information is true and some of it isn't, just like that last line. But it goes on to say, whilst hand-to-hand combat became the name of the game, dominating Hong Kong screens for several years following The Chinese Boxer, in 1972, Wang Yu decided to take a step back to make a film in a genre that had previously dominated the wuxia films. Released in 1973 to a disappointing box office, Beach of the War Gods was entirely made in Taiwan with a largely Taiwanese cast and crew, despite being a Golden Harvest production. Wang Yu made most of his films in the country from the 70s onwards due to an injunction by Run Run Shaw after the actor walked out on his Shaw Brothers contract to move over to Golden Harvest. See, I gave you some of that information already. Despite its initial commercial failure, Beach of the War Gods has its supporters, and Eureka, that's the film company, that's the release company that put the Blu-ray out, have deemed it worthy of a first-class treatment on Blu-ray. The film is very loosely based on actual historical events. It's set in 1556 a time when Japanese pirates, who were nicknamed the Woku, were ravaging Chinese shores, attacking the locals and holding towns and villages to ransom. The film takes place in one such village where the Woku are demanding a huge sum of money from the inhabitants or they will burn their homes to the ground. The poor villagers can't possibly meet those demands, but thankfully a wandering swordsman, Xiao Fang, played by Wang Yu, is passing through and volunteers to help them. He couldn't take on an army of Woku all by himself though, so he uses the days leading up to the Japanese deadline to assemble a team of skilled Chinese fighters to join their cause. So while Wang Yu was going against the grain and making wuxia, he wasn't entirely setting himself apart from the crowd and making patriotic films with the Japanese as the villains, a trope key to both his own Chinese boxer film and Bruce Lee's Fist of Fury, amongst others. While Beach of the War Gods is fiercely anti-Japanese on the surface, though, the great irony is that Wang Yu owes a great debt to Japanese cinema for the film's style and story. While you can see splashes of King Hu and Wang Yu's mentor Chang Che in the DNA of Beach of the War Gods, as well as a flavor of the spaghetti western, it's Japanese samurai movies that seem to have been most on Wang Yu's mind when making this film. Most notably, Wang Yu has cribbed Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai for his narrative. With half the length to play with, we only get 5 samurai here and much less fleshed out characters, but you can't fail to see the comparison. See, that's what I was saying. The Magnificent Seven was a remake of Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai. And I said that Beach of the War Gods was kind of like Jimmy Wang Yu's Magnificent Seven. So as I said these things, even before I'm reading this article for the first time live here on the air, I did not read it before going live. So I just wanted to share this with you guys because, you know, when I talk about these Kung Fu films, I want to let you know that there's so much history behind this. There's so much text to this, and because the films had been imported from other parts of the world due to the invasion that they had during the early 70s, which they called the Kung Fu film boom, these films are now a part of our DNA. It's like especially for those of us who are like my age, a little bit older, and we know these films as part of our culture now, even though that they were made somewhere else. So that's part of what we're doing here with this. I see we still got some people out there. We got about 10, 12 people out there. If anybody got any questions, man, now's the time. Write them in the chat. Well, you got some questions about Stormy talking about Beach of War Gods? I do believe this film is available on, I do believe it's on YouTube. I think you can find it out there. So, but yeah, man, this is one of my favorites here. I actually have it playing on my monitor in the background here. So no questions, huh? The person that wrote that article that I was reading to you gave this a 4 out of 5 stars for Kung Fu action films. If you guys see that little film reel I got playing in the background with some stills from the movie and stuff like that, I try to put those kind of things together because YouTube gets so funny when you play some of the trailers for these films and stuff. So I kind of do my own little edited of action shots and stills from the films. You know, I put that together for you guys. I keep telling you, Stormy be working out here, man. I don't be messing around. Of course, I would prefer to play the trailers so you guys could see that. But, you know, sometimes they'll let you play these trailers, but then they'll turn around and take your monetization off the video. Or they'll block it in certain areas, or both. So I'm like, okay, I'll do it this way then. Yeah. $704 Joe is asking, what was the box office numbers like? It was not successful at the box office. Excuse me, 704 Joe. It was not successful at the box office. That's why I said it was a box office failure when I talked, because he filmed this in 1972, but it was released in 1973. And understand that Bruce Lee's films were kind of like kicking butt in the box office at this time. So a film like this just didn't do well at all. But, you know, that's the way it was. They didn't even provide the numbers that it made, but it just wasn't successful. Dr. Mark, I see you out there. Got any questions? $704 is asking, what was the budget on this film? This film was a low budget film. I said that early in the video as well, 704, because it was shot in Taiwan. In Taiwan, they had these movie studios that had outdoor sets and everything built, pre-built sets, and all they had to do is dress them, paint them up or whatever, or hang some ornaments around them. There were not I think they had a couple of horses in this film, but not a lot. But horses were a part of this, and a lot of costumes. So the budget wasn't very high, because they didn't have a lot of food and indoor shots and things of that nature. They were outside a lot. A lot of the film takes place during the daytime, but there's a small chunk of it that takes place at nighttime. And when you're outside like that, you're on a beach, you don't have to worry about sets. So, as I said, it was on a shoestring budget. Films like this, they could probably make them for US $100,000, man, easy, or $150,000, whatever. Most of the budget for films like this would go toward the costumes, the weapons that they build, the blood that they use for, battle scenes and stuff like that. So, and like I said, there were no women in this film at all. And it was just kind of a weird thing, back in the 70s. Anthony Bolton is saying, I'm gonna check this movie out. Normally you don't have many action films where the hero isn't the last man standing. They are more like a catalyst for a better outcome with their sacrifice. Yeah, you know, well, that's one of the things that Jimmy Wang Yu he was an advocate of. Like, a lot of his heroes would walk off at the end, but every once in a while he would shock his audience with his heroes not making it. And one of my favorites of his is Blood of the Dragon. That's a classic right there. I'm not even sure if I did a review on Blood of the Dragon, but if I haven't, I'll get around to it, because Jimmy Wang Yu contributed mightily to the kung fu movie craze. Do you know his films like The One-Armed Boxer and The Chinese Boxer? They were the first like tournament films of martial arts, especially The One-Armed Boxer, where he took on all of those different villains. And one of the other titles for that film was The Chinese Professionals, because The One-Armed Boxer had to fight the Tibetan Lama. He had to fight the Buddhist, what do you call it? The Indian guy. He had to fight the Japanese guys, a karate guy, Korean. It was like, you know, it was like he took on a lot of different types of guys with different styles. And Jimmy Wang Yu came up with those ideas himself. So he was the first to do that in those films. No, 704 Joe, no, the DVDs and stuff like this came so much later, man. They weren't even thinking about these films. A lot of these films found new life on the East and West Coast at what do you call them? Video stores. And there was a resurgence, and then they started playing these films on television in America. But over in Hong Kong, a lot of the films were just, after they ran, they were just in the vaults. When Shaw Studios closed up, a number of those films were locked away in vaults, man. Yeah. $704 Joe says, Blood of the Dragon, my first kung fu movie. Yeah, that movie, I really liked it when I first saw it. Jimmy Wang Yu walked around with that silver spear in that film, taking on all those villains, man. The end of that movie is him just fighting against an army of dudes. And he expires standing up, facing the sun, facing the road ahead. Yep, great kung fu film, Blood of the Dragon. Anybody else got some questions out there? Universal Truth, Anthony Bolton, Dr. Mark. Champion Heart. See, if you guys ask me some questions, that could keep things moving right along. My first Kung Fu film. See, you would notice if you watch these, but I don't mind repeating. My first Kung Fu film was King Boxer, aka Five Fingers of Death. And I love that film. It's the only non-Bruce Lee film that I love as much as my favorite Bruce Lee film, because it was one of the best Kung Fu movies for the time that it came out. The feats of strength, the leaping into the air. That was the first film I ever saw those guys look like they leaped 20 feet in the air. The weird sound effects from when they punched and kicked people and threw them around, snatching eyeballs out and all of that stuff. It was like King Boxer is a classic film of the genre. Now, another film that is not as popular that I saw around the same time, shortly after King Boxer, was The Killer, aka Sacred Knives of Vengeance. Now, both of those films, King Boxer and Sacred Knives, are Shaw Brothers films. So they had the same sound effects and everything. And the final fight scene in The Killer, it is over the top like a son of a gun. And they got this Japanese villain who comes out of nowhere. He's nowhere in the movie, the rest of the film. And he comes out to fight the two heroes at the end of the movie. It's like, where the hell this guy come from? And then they have to kill him. It's like, man, it's crazy. But it's one of my favorite, man. Universal Truth says, I'll have to check it out. As true with boxing, I love seeing different styles on display. Now look at 704 Joe is on one tonight. I don't know what's up with this brother, but you know, they got a new timeout feature on these YouTube streams here, man. So might have to implement that very soon. But yeah, I'm gonna get ready to get on up out of here. Now, like I said, only a few of you guys came out for this tonight, but by next week it'll be over 200 views. I just don't know, man. I don't know how that works, but YouTube keep telling me, oh, you should make more of these because your audience like them. But then I have the audience out here and I ask them questions, they don't even respond to me. Bunch of foolishness, man. Bunch of foolishness. Universal Truth is asking, have I seen Fist of Legend? Of course I have. Fist of Legend is Jet Li's remake of Bruce Lee's Fist of Fury. Spawned a couple of sequels. One that played by a guy that was supposed to be an imitator of Jet Li, and one was a sequel played by Donnie Yen, playing the character that Jet Li was supposed to play. So yeah. And Fearless is Jet Li's prequel to Fist of Legend, where he's actually playing the master, Ho Young Chao, or Fuck Young Gap. And that was touted as Jet Li's last martial art film when he was filming it. He has since made a couple of action films that had martial arts, but his Fearless role was supposed to be touted as his last main martial art film. Yeah. Champion Heart says Five Fingers of Death is a classic because it was a kung fu film. It was the first kung fu film for a lot of people, for sure. Yeah. Definitely that. Definitely that. So, but yeah, man. With that being said, we're going to get ready to get on up out of here. I've taken up enough of your time. And we'll see what I come up with next. You know, we'll see what I come up with next. But I have to say, I do get a little bit disenchanted by the lack of participation. You guys will come out there and just be sitting out there. I don't know if y'all are watching 2 or 3 different streams at one time or whatever, not focused up, but hey, a lot of effort goes into these joints, man. You know, there's a lot of foolishness going on out there, and you guys know I ain't about that. But I ain't here to preach, so I'm just gonna get on up out of here. Shout out to the mighty LDBC. I'll be back soon.